Hi, I'm Luke Corbett, and welcome to this disciplinary visual argument presentation. With you, I will be sharing the use and nature of visuals within the legal world. See, within the many fields of law, visual representation is actually pretty rare. And though it does come in three distinguishable forms, each iteration of visuals within the legal world carries with it a common theme of narrowing interpretation, not widening it. After all, when everything is said and done in the legal world, everyone involved wants there to be a clear-cut, yes, it is this way, or no, it's that way. Which is to say, nobody wants there to be any room for error when it comes to the decisions made. And to that effect, visualization in the legal world exists solely to make sure that things are closer to one specific outcome, rather than widening any possible interpretations that may exist. So, to rephrase in simpler terms, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, visuals exist in the legal world to limit interpretation. And so here, I'll show you what I mean. Starting off, allow me to introduce you to the three major forms that visualization takes within the legal world. First, there is the legal exposé. This is pretty loose. It's just something that exists to explain something else, usually existing to explain something to somebody who isn't super familiar with the legal world. Second is evidence. Evidence is something most people are probably familiar with. It's something that can be used to either definitively or at least suggestively prove that something is a certain way, be it that someone did something or that something has happened. Finally, there's the example. And an example is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Think of copyrights or diagrams explaining certain crimes and what it constitutes. They're just something that exists to display how certain parameters are set. So with those terms defined, we can go on into exploring how these three things are used in the legal world and why, pretty much universally, they exist to limit interpretation. So, first up to bat is the legal exposé. Now this is by far the loosest of these three, and there isn't really a commonly accepted nickname. Legal exposé is just what I chose to reflect this broad category. You can see an example up on the screen. It's the least formal and most broad of any of these, and pretty much is never used in a courtroom setting. This is something created by lawyers to help clients or potential clients know what they're dealing with, or sometimes created by companies like, say, an insurance company, under the consultation of legal experts to help explain something to their patrons. As the legal visualization expert Hanel Korhonen says, our world is getting so complicated that we need new ways to quickly grasp relevant information simply. And informational graphics, such as the ones shown, offer quick and easily digestible insight into what a client should do, how something works, or what a certain thing entails. And in pretty much all of these cases, they exist to inform someone strictly on the nature of how something should or will be, and are never intended to be open to interpretation. And once again quoting Hanel Korhonen, with visuals you create clarity and make content memorable and impactful for your client. So, even though it can occur in many contexts, the only purpose of the legal exposé is to clarify and inform. Meaning, from small-time attorneys explaining something privately all the way to a publicly distributed PSA, it exists to provide a framework that narrows what you should do. So, with that out of the way, we can talk about evidence. Rarely altered from its original form for the obvious reason of, not lying in court, graphics, pictures, and other visuals are used in a courtroom setting to provide evidence towards or against a suggested sequence of events. Right here, you can see a snapshot of a traffic camera's view over what would shortly become the scene of a vehicular accident. Images and videos like this are extremely important in legal cases where a person is accused of committing a crime, and are used often in many court cases across the entire spectrum of the legal world. They serve the critical purpose of identifying the strict truth of what happened during a specific incident or chain of incidents, at least in the capacity that can help suggest where the truth may lie, if nothing else. To quote John H. Larson, the use of terms of logic to describe reasoning in law continues to this day because logic is understood more broadly to include other informational tools of thorough and effective reasoning. To reason requires knowledge, and knowledge requires evidence. So being a display of unequivocal fact, Pure visual evidence serves the untainted purpose of narrowing the reality of its audience down to one or of a selected few interpretations of an event. Without visual evidence like this, one is forced to rely on less compelling and complete means of deducing what happened in a situation, such as eyewitness accounts or even less reliable things, making it incredibly critical. Finally, we come to the example, which is the most exacting of the three major visuals found within legal circles. Primarily, examples of this nature come in two forms: illustrative and informative. Illustrative examples are most often present in material used to educate the reader about scenarios and how certain laws apply to them. To the right, we can see an illustrated example of a car pileup. By labeling each caricature, a textbook would then be able to go into detail about where or if each individual car involved in this pileup was at fault. In court cases involving a jury, this is especially useful because it helps set an example for what exactly a crime entails and helps clarify whether or not the people involved are guilty. All the same, these are mostly seen inside of the academic law world, places where you're learning about law rather than enacting it. But within that area, they are extremely common. Now here's the second form of the example, the informative example. Used to display exactly how something is or works, it is pretty much exclusively seen in copyrights. On the left is just one such copyright, pulled from the copyright of a simple magnetic sorter that separates tramp iron from non-magnetic material. Copyrights like this are used to narrowly and specifically define what a certain property is, thereby allowing the owners of that copyright and the courts to identify if their intellectual property is being infringed upon or stolen. In every case, however, from informative to illustrative, a legal example is used to narrow down what a concept of something is, to the effect of allowing those who deliberate on it to have an easier time identifying whether or not something falls within the parameters set by the example. Now, without a great deal of either text or spoken words surrounding these examples, they're not especially useful, but in their element with the correct surrounding context, they are invaluable towards the end goal of increasing the clarity of what is intended by the laws or the copyright. When illustrators lean on conventional images, readers lose opportunities to interpret. These are words by James A. Erickson. Though Erickson meant this in the negative when speaking upon children's books, the restriction of interpretations is entirely the sole goal of visual aids in any legal setting. Legal exposés inform broad audiences of exact precedents for what they should do or how something works. Legal evidence is used to narrowly define what, where, or how a certain thing happened, limiting the guesswork and granting a lot of clarity. And visual examples clarify for the sake of creating strict parameters that must be met for something to fall under the nature of a specific property or law. So, overall, the goal of all of these is to minimize personal interpretation. To the degree that it is possible, the law is intended to be impartial and absolute, meaning the less personal interpretation there is, the greater impartiality there is, and therefore the greater the fairness of our legal system. Thanks for watching.